ready? All right, everyone. Hello. Thanks for stopping by. Hope everyone's enjoying your last day of Geo Week 2022. My name is Mallory Dodd. I'm a Solutions Architect for iMerit Technology Services. Some of you, if you've attended any of the talks this morning or today about the machine learning and AI conversations that have been happening, you might be a bit interested in knowing how you can apply this to your own work, to your own business, to your own services. So I'm here to talk a little bit about that, talk a little about some of the use cases that we've been working on personally at iMerit so that you can get an idea of how you might actually be able to use this in your business. So just to kind of give a brief intro to iMerit, what we do is we are a data labeling services provider. So most of our clients are clients who have decided that they want to automate some part of their service or perhaps some part of even their product that they're offering to their clients. They have some data that they've collected, and they need to have that data annotated or labeled to extract specific information out of that data. Like maybe they're looking for building footprints, or maybe they're looking for land use classification, or maybe they're a utilities company that's interested in finding defects along their assets. And so they need to annotate that data. And then once they have that training data set, they can use that to train an AI algorithm or machine learning model to be able to actually do that process automatically in the future. And what that would then look like is they can just feed their data directly into that model and get the same output. And that saves them significant time and cost and processing and all of that stuff. So that's kind of where iMerit comes into play, right? We annotate our clients' data according to their needs, according to their specifications, so that they can build and train those models that are going to help them improve their business in the future. So what are some examples of what that looks like, right? So obviously there's a lot of folks here from the energy and utilities industry. We've had a lot of people stopping by our booth asking questions about that. I definitely would say that at iMerit, we've certainly seen, energy and utility is really leading the way in implementing AI and ML in, amongst the geospatial sector. So I think that's really great that they've been proving out, ways that you can actually use this to automate your process. So some examples of what we've done. You can see here both 2D data, imagery data, as well as LiDAR data. These are typically collected by drones. They could be collected from satellite imagery as well, just depending on exactly what the customer is looking for. But they will have their set of data. Maybe they have LiDAR data. Maybe they have some imagery that they've collected from drones, flying maybe along their electrical lines or over their buildings and things like that. And they're looking to have us annotate that data and pull something meaningful out of it. So an example might be if they're trying to get a better inventory of their assets, they might actually have us annotate every single specific component along those assets so that they can train a model to recognize those assets, recognize those components, know what they look like, know how to classify them. Or they may even want to take that a step further. They might want to be looking for damages or defects or areas that need maintenance. So that's kind of what you might see in some of those 2D images. For example, water damage on the roof of their commercial buildings. They need to train a model that can automatically detect that water damage so that if there's a big storm event, they can fly a drone overhead. They have a model that they can process that imagery and they can know, okay, here's areas where we found water damage on our buildings and we need to send a maintenance team out there. Or maybe they want to identify rust, right, on their towers or on any of their assets so that they can know, okay, we need to, have maintenance come out here. These are the areas that have the worst amount of damage that we need to be looking at. So that's some examples of what we've done in utilities. Obviously, there's a lot more that can go into that as well. There's mapping that a lot of utilities companies have been looking at as well, just simply mapping their assets, knowing what they have, doing inventory, doing all their asset maintenance. Sometimes that's done through a GIS, sometimes not. We do have the capability to work with your GIS data as well as just imagery data or LiDAR data that you might have. So there's a lot of different ways that you can approach things like this. And we're extremely customized in our approach and in our solutions. So we can look at whatever it is that you need done and help you get it labeled for your use case specifically. One other interesting use case I'd like to share is bathymetry. So we have also worked with bathymetry data. And this is a really cool use case because in this example, This client has bathymetry data of the ocean floor, and they have some information from their experts about, what types of objects are on that ocean floor. And what they're trying to do is provide an AI service that can actually help people understand where hazards are on the ocean floor. And this is a service that will help, divers, fishermen, boating companies, any companies that are, out and about on the ocean, especially around the coastlines, can know what hazards might be there, what might be present that they need to be aware of and watch out for. So what they've had us do is look at their data and actually annotate, do object detection or feature extraction, as it may be more commonly known, to actually extract, what are those objects on the seafloor, how large are they, what shape are they, and then they have, as well as, expert metadata about what actually are those objects, and we can assist them as well with that classification, whether that would be like a major hazard or a minor hazard that they need to be aware of. And so this is just a really cool use case and an example of, unique ways that our clients are using AI and ML and using our services to help them accomplish those use cases and those services that they're trying to provide to their clients. We have also done some more traditional, what you might call GIS work as well. So obviously lots of use cases around land use classification, around feature extraction, right? Many clients have a lot of aerial imagery, and they're looking to identify buildings. They're looking to identify roads, bodies of water. We also have a lot of clients in the agriculture industry who may be interested in that land use classification use case, where they want to understand, where's the vegetation, where's the urban areas, even looking at the health of that vegetation, right? So they're trying to train models that can actually process large amounts of satellite imagery or just aerial imagery, and actually be able to extract those features automatically. Something which, previously would have taken hundreds, potentially thousands of man hours, GIS analysts, GIS technicians, sitting around manually drawing all of these features. Now, right, they can train a model that can do that, for them, and do it with a pretty high degree of confidence. And so, that's definitely cutting down a lot of processing costs. It's making updation a lot easier, I would even say, right? Because there's a lot of, groups out there that have a lot of data about buildings, urban areas, roads, vegetation, things like that. But as we all know, the landscape is constantly changing. There's constantly, new buildings being built, buildings being demolished, right? So every year they're trying to update their maps, and previously they'd have to do this manually, and it's very slow and very time-consuming process. But with an AI model, obviously, they don't have to spend that much time. They can take their data, maybe they have annual data collections that they do, or they're just, using other data providers, feed that through their algorithm. They actually can get, a change report, basically to say, here's all the new buildings that were identified, here's places where there used to be buildings, they're not there anymore. And all of that is done through using an AI model. And so, of course, where we come in, once again, is through the actual annotation of that data to create that training data set that they will need to train that model to have a high quality output and to have high confidence in the output, so that they can trust that data to be accurate. We've also done a lot of work in mapping and point of interest marking. As you can imagine, as an AI and ML industry company, we have a lot of clients in the autonomous vehicle space. But we've seen this, starting to expand even beyond autonomous vehicles, right? Where there's a lot of companies out there that are interested in building their own vector maps, potentially of urban areas, even of rural areas, or of specific service areas where maybe they have assets in a particular area, and they want to map the location of those assets in relation to roads, buildings, other public networks and things of that nature. And so they are looking to actually build their own maps. And of course, again, going back to the updation topic that we talked about previously, where it can take a lot of work to actually keep those maps and keep those networks updated and current, so that, they don't have to worry about spending a lot of man hours, right, trying to mark every new road and every new building that's constructed. And then point of interest marking is another one that we actually have seen a lot, especially from clients in the space of actually like being satellite imagery providers, where they want to be able to provide some amount of analytics along with that imagery to their clients. They want to go beyond just simply creating the data. They want to have some kind of service or some kind of ability, right, for their clients to actually get some data or some useful data, I should say, out of that. And so they're interested in, knowing where are those points of interest, right, that our clients are looking for. Can we actually train a model or an algorithm to be able to detect certain types of points of interest that we know that our clients are looking for, and that maybe they are using those points of interest in conjunction with their vector maps of an area to kind of know where things are, right? And so I think one example use case that I'm familiar with that we've worked on is identifying gas stations from satellite imagery. Gas stations tend to have a specific shape. You can see the pumps. You can see like vehicle service areas like air pumps or vacuums and things like that also in the area around the gas station. And so by annotating those features of the gas stations, we're able to help our client train an algorithm which can automatically detect gas stations from satellite imagery, right? And so now they're able to collect their imagery, they're able to feed that through, and boom, they already know where all the gas stations are that they're looking for along their network, right? So there's lots of really interesting use cases that can happen there with mapping. It's something that we continue to build out among our own expertise, but we, among the autonomous vehicles industry, we've gotten pretty detailed down to, individual lane geometry, not just of the lane that you may be currently in, but of every other lane in the intersection, how they're interacting with each other, what is the actual geometry of how they intersect, what is the directionality of the roads, so that you can actually build a complete transportation network that shows the flow from one road to another, speed limits, all kinds of things of that nature. And I've been hearing lots of interesting stuff about utility network mapping here, especially at GeoWeek, and a lot of like the underground mapping and rail network mapping and all kinds of things that are really, really interesting and really starting to be expanded beyond just the typical autonomous vehicle, street mapping that we are maybe more familiar with. So there's lots of different use cases there as well that are really coming into play. And again, our teams are, experts at data labeling. You might think that data labeling is simple, like, oh, anybody can draw a bounding box around a car, right, in an image. Why, I can just have my intern do that. That might work if you're, doing some very small data and you're just testing things out. But when you're talking about hundreds of thousands of images or massive point clouds going along miles and miles and miles of rail or utilities networks, it becomes a lot more difficult to process all of that information. And it becomes very difficult to actually scale your operations and scale the usability of your AI. And that's where we can come in. And we also are experts on edge cases, because edge cases is where you'll really get tripped up. If you ever try doing your own annotation, you'll think that it's very simple until you start running into those weird situations where you're like, well, should I consider this a car if I can only see the very back corner of the trunk of the car? Should I label that? Should I not label that? How is that going to affect my model? What should I call a car versus a van versus a truck? There's so many different questions that come into play as soon as you start actually trying to do that labeling. And at iMerit, our teams are experts in identifying those edge cases and working with those edge cases and helping you understand the best way to approach how you should label these things and how it's going to be most usable to you in the end as well. So you can visit iMerit over at booth 1131. We are giving away an iPad and a remote control cooler as well, if that helps to entice you over to our booth. But it's a great way if you have further, questions that you want to ask, if you really want to get into the weeds about what we do or how it can be usable to your use case, please do stop by. We're happy to answer your questions. But I will also answer some questions here as well. If any of you have any questions to share right now, I'm happy to answer. Sure.
Can you provide a little bit more detail about the actual process of annotation? I'm assuming you're not using it. So that process, what is that process?
All right, so the question was if I can describe a little bit more of the process of how we actually do that annotation. That's a great question. So we use our clients' data. We're not a data collection service, so our clients will transfer their data to us, and they'll give us their specifications and their requirements for what they want us to label in their data. We oftentimes, part of my role as a solutions architect is to help them understand preemptively, like what are some potential edge cases, what are some potential ambiguities or problems that we might encounter, according to that, and try to work through as much of that stuff ahead of time as we can. And then we'll determine, how many people do we need and what kind of tooling do we need. So at iMerit, we're tool agnostic, meaning that we don't, force our clients to use one specific type of software or one specific type of data format. or one specific type of labeling platform, right? We have a number of different partners that we work with, and so we will also help to determine what is the best tooling platform for your specific project, right? So like if you have video data, there are other tools, there are some tools that are better at processing video data than others, or if you have LiDAR data, right, there's certain tools that are going to be better at processing LiDAR data than others. So we help you to make sure that we're setting up the right tool for your project. And then we'll also then put together a team of our annotators who will be assigned to your project, and they will train on your data, on your guidelines. They'll become experts in what you're looking for. And we will then just start an iterative process with you. Usually we start with a smaller amount of data at first to make sure that we're understanding what you're looking for. Gives you the opportunity to kind of check over that output, make sure that it looks like how you expect it to look, and that our annotations are high quality, right, and are kind of meeting your needs. And then once we get that green light from you, we can really scale up from there. So if you have hundreds of thousands of images, or a lot of point clouds, or whatever it might be, we can then really get into a very optimized cadence, right, where we can continually to improve our time per task on your project, delivering consistently high quality data to you. And it depends on your cadence, right? So if you have, let's say, a longer term project where you're going to have a lot of volume, and you want to set up a long-term contract where you just have a team that works month over month on these things, or you may have a smaller volume where you have a specific set of data that you need annotated just as like a single project. We can also work with you to set up that as well, right? So we have a lot of flexibility. We're very customized, so we will customize to your project and your needs, right? Any other questions? Alrighty, folks, thank you so much. Again, we're booth 1131 over in that direction towards the back wall. So if you do have other questions that you want to ask us, or you want to dive in a little bit more, please feel free to stop by and see us. We're happy to talk with you, and also you could win an iPad. So I make it worth your time. Thank you so much, everyone.